guys, and welcome back to another episode of Federico Talks Watches. And boy, is it good to be back. Today, I wanted to talk about 4 watches which are undervalued due to misconceptions. 4 watches that I think you can pick up for a fraction of what they're worth simply because there's either a misconception or something that's just not true that is propagated in the watch collecting community. And you guys should let me know what you think in the comment section below. But of course, before we get started, customary wristwatch check. Today I'm wearing my Girard-Perregaux Laureato flyback chronograph calendar in rose gold. Absolutely love it. It's also known as my Miami douchebag watch. And yeah, it just felt like a douchebag today, so I took it out. And also, guys, don't forget to check out delraywatch.com. A bunch of new inventory in stock, and this week is going to see the biggest update in inventory in Del Rey watch history, starting today and going throughout the week. But we got in a Rolex Explorer 2 16570 with the very loved 3186 movement, made for a very short period of time, quite rare, quite collectible. We also got in a Rolex Datejust 36 with the mint green dial, cheapest one in the country, and one of my favorites, a Cartier Tank Louis Cartier in the large size, but get this, the manual wind version, very often seen in quartz, but this is the manual mechanical wind version of the watch. Absolutely stunning for an iconic timepiece. All that and way more at delraywatch.com, the best place for a watch geek to buy a watch. Link in the description below. So yeah, guys, I wanted to bring to your attention 4 watches, and there are more to add to this list, but we're going to start with 4 watches, which in my opinion are undervalued due to misconceptions. Now, this is entirely my opinion. You may disagree, and of course that's your prerogative, but in my case I'd think you were wrong. And in no particular order, we start with probably the biggest offender, and that is the Omega Speedmaster Reduced. The 39mm version of the Omega Speedmaster with the ETA 2892 with the chrono module. It looks just like the Speedmaster, but it is smaller. And the dial spacing is slightly different, of course, because of the size, but something that I think should be very popular. I mean, a lot of people want a smaller size. 39 is not too small. It's also automatic, which, yeah, doesn't fall in line with, like, the classic Speedmaster, but it's a positive for a lot of people. And unlike the 7750 versions, this looks like a classic Speedmaster and isn't particularly thick. However, you can pick a lot of these up in the low $2,000 range in the US because a lot of people think it's very expensive to service. Now, I think this is a misconception because while it's not entirely untrue, it's not as simple as it's expensive to service. So essentially the movement in it is a 2892 ETA, which is a time-only movement with a chronograph module on top. And that in itself, for a full service, especially if the chrono's not running, can be very expensive because a lot of watchmakers will charge you double the price because essentially it's 2 movements sandwiched together. What a lot of people don't know, or what a lot of service centers won't tell you, is you don't need to service the entire thing all the time. If the chrono is still running well, especially because it's not used particularly often, then you can just service the 2892 base movement. Yes, it might be a little bit more expensive than a standard 2892 because you still have to detach the module, but you don't have to service the full-blown chrono module all the time. You can get away with servicing, just the part that keeps time. On top of that, a lot of people have the misconception that you need to service your watch every 3 to 4 years, which just isn't true. I don't service a watch until it starts acting up, sometimes 10 years in between services. So you add the fact that people think service intervals are shorter, the fact that they think they need to spend double the price to service it, and that's what a lot of people say. And this watch, for around $21, $22, $2,300 becomes unworth it for the $1,000 service price or slightly less. But as I said, that's simply not true. You can wait longer in between services, and while sometimes you may need to service the chronograph module, I'd say 95% of times, and don't forget, I own a service center, you don't need to service the chronograph module. You can just service the base movement. Now, a lot of watchmakers don't like that I'll say that because they're going to lose out on the revenue, or they don't think it's the proper way to do it. Hey, listen, as I said, I am not a watchmaker, but I do own a service center as part of my business, and I'm telling you that this is very possible. And this servicing issue is keeping the prices on this Speedmaster Reduced much lower than it should be. Second is a brand you may or may not have heard of, and that is Daniel Jean Richard. Daniel Jean Richard, which was owned by Girard-Perregaux, was their kind of entry-level model, right? And you can pick a lot of these up for under $1,000 on eBay, or under $2,000 for a chronograph. And that's because people, A, don't really know who the brand is, and people that do know think it's just a cheaper Girard-Perregaux. The truth is, a lot of these watches, not all of them, but a lot of them, use the same in-house Girard-Perregaux movements. Some of them use ETA, which is fine, nothing wrong with ETA, and I still think it's a good value. But some of them use the in-house Girard-Perregaux chronograph and time-only movements, and the fact that you can pick up one of these watches for like under $2,000 and sometimes even under $1,000 depending on the model is insane to me. Yes, the brand never sold very well. Yes, not a lot of people knew what they were. Yes, they did an awful job at marketing, but that can be your gain. The fact that the company did an awful job of marketing it can get a watch geek a really nice piece of horology for not a lot of money. I think Daniel Jean Richard is a winner. And then third, and I think this is definitely the case, is the previous generation, not the current generation, the previous generation Rolex Cellini, like the Cellini Danaus. Here you've got solid gold watches with in-house and rare Rolex manual line movements. You could pick them up for under $7,000 or $8,000. And they're not particularly small-sized either. Yes, the design may not be for everybody, but the fact that Rolex never really marketed it, the fact that Rolex isn't known for dress watches, the fact that for decades Rolex didn't update this model, doesn't mean that, A, they're actually quite rare as far as Rolex goes, because they probably the least selling model, but also you get a gold watch with an in-house manual wind movement that is rare by the world's #1 watchmaker for less than the price of a Datejust. That to me is absolutely not like nuts. Yeah, the movement doesn't have the finishing of a Patek. Yeah, it might not be super in demand, but it's a piece of watchmaking history with precious metals made by the behemoth that is Rolex. I mean, come on, a solid gold watch with an in-house manual movement for under $8,000, sometimes under $7,000, depending on the model. That's crazy to me. I mean, what would the equivalent like manual wine Chopard cost you? Probably more than that. I'm just saying, the fact that it was undermarketed, a lot of people didn't even know it existed, the misconception that they weren't good watches, that really hurts the resale value, and that means you can pick them up for a steal. And then fourth is a general category, vintage American watches. The misconception here is America never made good watches, that brands like Hamilton in modern times are lower end brands because they sell for $300-400. That may be the truth today. In fact, Hamilton's not even made in America. It's owned by Swatch Group. But back in the day, Hamilton and other companies like Waltham made very high-end watches. And I'm not even talking about pocket watches, also wristwatches. High-end calibers, high-end decoration. On the smaller size, because of the vintage, you're probably looking the 60s and before. But you can get a hell of a watch for well under $1,000, well under $1,000. Divers, chronos, even though the chronos are above $1,000. dress watches, and you're going to get something that was very well made with a lot of attention to detail that in its time was right up there in luxury watchmaking, but because the US is not associated with watchmaking anymore, and because the brands that sold their names have now tumbled down the pecking order, doesn't mean these watches should be undervalued. I mean, for $500-600, you can pick up a really well done Hamilton, Waltham, Benrus. Yeah, they're not all created equal. Do your research, of course. But the misconception that American watchmaking is no good has kept these prices down. And to me, I think that is awesome for collectors like me and you because we get a bargain. Anyway, guys, that's it for me today. I'm glad to be back. Regular scheduled programming is to resume. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. It really does help. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any more content. And of course, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.